Hello everyone, how you doing? Hope you're doing okay. Nice to see you again. It has been a while. Before we get into looking at this month's White Dwarfs, I'm going to do a shameless plug for our latest Kickstarter, which is on Kickstarter at the moment, and that's why I'm crouched in this corner with my Empire Force, which you may have seen on my blog or on our social media feed recently, because over 2/3 of this army is comprising of figures that we have on Kickstarter at the moment. They're called the Myrcipian Mercenaries. That's M-Y-R Scipian Mercenaries, and the idea is that they're a bit like the Empire troops that Games Workshop did for a while, that had the plug-in weapons, so you could arm them however you like. We've got 4 bodies and 7 weapon types, and they're designed for very cheaply building these big units that you might want in your Empire armies that are otherwise quite expensive and quite hard to get hold of. So if you are at all interested in building a fancy medieval force with great swords and crossbows and hand cannons and swords and bows and spears and halberds and those kinds of things, check that out. It's on Kickstarter at the moment, and I put a link in the feed. Yeah, now let's go to our White Dwarfs. Woo, time warpy, woo. Okay, here we are. So this is White Dwarf 56, August 1984, and White Dwarf 176, August 1994. It starts off in the 80s. Just let's take a look at this cover for a second. This is a Chris Achilleos cover, I guess, of some kind of hobgoblin. Certainly looks like it from the attire, kind of Eastern looking costume here, and some nice sort of medieval buildings in the background here, just sort of penciled in enough to so you can see what's there and to catch the eye, but not enough to dominate this cover. And it's interesting, isn't it, with some artists, I don't know if you find this, I really had no idea who Chris Achilleos was until a couple of years ago. I think, was it last year he passed away, or the year before? And then there was a lot of grieving in the gaming community, and I sort of thought, oh, I should have a look at who this guy was. He's done so many things that I would recognise. It's just funny that I'd seen all of his images, all of his artwork, and not really clocked that that's who it was. So yeah, there you go. I had a bit of a Chris Achilleos back catalogue to look through. Let's flick past all of these things for the moment. Adverts. Okay, here we have an article on ninjas. Yeah, just generally in fantasy series ninjas, but it's quite interesting because obviously ninjas were becoming a big thing in the 80s in comic book culture and cartoon culture and that kind of thing. And at a time when there wasn't a great deal of information freely available, we didn't have the web, people would be going to libraries, I guess, and looking at not particularly scholarly works unless you were part of a university and had access to a more scholarly library. Not a great deal of information on the actual origins of the ninjas, so this would have been it's a very short, concise look, but whoever's written this has obviously put some time and effort into researching it. Maybe it's a bit of a pet project for them. And yeah, some interesting information if you weren't familiar with the actual origins of the ninja and you wanted a more sort of historical, less comic book karate ninja look at things, then that's a good article to have had access to. I'm not going to do the reviews, but there's a review here of the Forever War. If you haven't read that book, I've not played the game. If anyone's played the game, this is the Mayfair Games version. I can't really see how it would work particularly well as a game, but this seems to suggest that it does. If you've played the game, let me know. I'd be interested. Good book. Good, really interesting concept. Really interesting. Here's some more literature-based stuff. This is a quick overview of the world of the Belgariad. That's the series. There's an advert for it. Where is it? Have we just gone past it? It's somewhere here. Anyway, we'll flag it out when we find it. David Eddings series. I've only read one. Oh, there we are. Ta-da! I've only read one David Eddings book, and it isn't one of these ones. I think I've read The Hidden City. I liked it. It felt kind of a bit sort of, you know, cliche derivative fantasy to me, but the world is obviously very well organised, very well structured. I got the sense from the book, or at least the thing that I remember is being a cleric or a paladin of a particular deity is very important. The deity that you serve is very important, and so this goes into a bit of a discussion of some of those deities. Got a nice map here, nice hand-drawn map, some ideas for some storylines. Clearly pointed that you then go and read the books and decide to use those for further inspiration. This is an interesting Call of Cthulhu scenario. It recommends that you play it with people who are not big into Call of Cthulhu, because this is like a sci-fi investigative mysteries. They've taken the investigative aspects that are so key to Call of Cthulhu, and they've done a sci-fi setting that uses those. And I think this works really well. I haven't played it through, but it certainly reads like it would be a very interesting thing to discuss. Basically, you're dropped on a settlement or a colony, a sort of research settlement that has failed to report in, and of course everyone's dead, Dave, and you've got to try and find out why. It's interesting. And then next episode of Thrud the Barbarian, of course, Thrud's on his mighty 12 tasks. No, 3 tasks. 12 tasks would take a long time. 3 tasks. This is his second task, and if you remember last month, he waltzed through the temple and seized what he thought was the Serpent's Eye, only to find that it was the wrong temple. This is the right temple, and of course there's a lovely maiden here to be rescued as well, so all good for Thrud. Sunfires Heart here. This is part 1 of a 2-part, I think, adventure. The adventurers have been hired by a guild that owns an island to find out why their current tenants, who are a bit eccentric, have stopped paying their rent on the island. Sort of series of maps. It's fun. I like it. It's a bit of investigation, and then it ends in a typical kind of dungeon crawly thing. But what I don't like about this article is all of this big blocks of colour here. Like this makes the text really hard to read. Okay, maybe if you've just started introducing colour into White Dwarf and you want it to attract people's attention, then it attracts people's attention, but it makes the text, certainly that blue, makes the text so hard to read and follow, which you would need to do in a bit of a hurry if you were referencing this as a GM. So yeah, bad use of colour here. And then also the maps here are a bit squished. I'd like to see these sort of developed a bit more, and actually some of them are a bit pointless. We've got the player's map here, and then the GM's map. It has a couple more settlements on it, but it's not so dramatically different that I don't think you could do. You could have one map of the island, one map of each of the settlements, and then a close-up map of the castle where your adventurers are supposed to end up. This is the other thing, is it's a bit sort of shoehorny. I can imagine adventurers either wandering around for days and days and days not really finding anything, or a GM being really like, hurry up, let's get to the dungeon, and pushing them straight to the castle. I imagine this first section here is supposed to be done as one session, so you would really want to hurry up and get to the castle. But there are a few nice encounters to be had in the villages. There's a bunch of hippies who are out to get the players, and some not ninjas but masked assassins certainly, who are out to get the players, and some sinister wrecked boats to have a look at. So you could definitely string this out for a couple of sessions. We'll skip past the travellers, although there's a nice little note here. Calm down, Mr. Flynn, there's a good chance you'll see the end of this adventure, providing reader response doesn't axe the series first. Another nod to the fact that Travellers were getting a lot of stick from readers of White Dwarf at the time, and I quite understand why. Ship-to-ship encounters in Traveller. Yes, it's a nice segue, and here's some more sci-fi stuff. There's some sci-fi miniatures. Some nice things here. Recognise a few of these. I think these are alternative armies. I think still in production. This is a really lovely kit bashed. It looks like, or it reminds me of the Space Winnebago in Spaceballs. This is a kit bashed Airfix or Tamiya kit with some salt and pepper shakers stuck to the top of it. This is very fun. Citadel Collect series here is an advert for, apparently if you bought blister packs at this time, they came with a card backing that had one of these squares that you could cut out, and if you could make the entire creature or the entire adventurer, then you could send off for that model, and they didn't release those models other than to people who are collecting these blister packs. So did you ever collect any of these? Did you manage to collect an entire creature? Did you go around, if you had a Games Workshop near you, did you go around looking at the backs of the packs, trying to find the bits that you were missing? And what did these look like? I don't think I've ever actually seen these blister pack only collectors pieces. I wonder if anyone's got them in their collections. It'd be good to see them. There's an article on using technology in fantasy settings, but basically when they're talking about technology, they're talking about black powder and ornithopters, and then some general principles. So somebody has been playing Flintlock or been wanting to play some more late medieval fantasy, I guess, and has been very influenced by Dune, of course, with the ornithopters. Yeah, guide for putting those in into your fantasy adventures. And then we're at the end adverts, and we're at the end of the 80s. So let's take a look at the 90s. Here's a cover. This is Talisman, right? 3rd edition Talisman, I think. I mean, quite honestly, it's a barbarian and a wizard and a dwarf. I can't see an elf, but it could be a Warhammer Quest cover, it could be a supplement to any of the dungeon or role-playing things that they did at the time. They're just the stock characters, aren't they? Wizards and barbarians and dwarves fighting dragons. Could be anything. It is Talisman. There you go, it's Jeff Taylor. Talisman illustration. So what have we got inside here? Mighty Imperator Titan. I always quite fancied one of these from the article in White Dwarf that had the conversion of one of these into a Chaos Titan. That was one of my favourite. That's a bit later on though. We'll get to that in a few years' time if I'm still doing it. Here's some more Bloodball. We've discussed what I think about Bloodball. But here's some more Bloodball anyway. Probably an interesting addition if you are interested in Bloodball. There's our ram-headed Chaos Beastman from last issue, and some Chaos Knights. And quite a fun guide here by Mike McVeigh to some Chaos mutations. Some of these, like this guy with the wings, he's appeared in a lot of battle reports, photos, like on the back of White Dwarf. Similarly, this guy and this guy, the Chaos Swarms, I've seen those a lot. But some, so this plastic beastman here with a crab claw and an extra Skaven arm. Not seen him so much, I guess, because he's more rank and file. And then this more in-depth article on creating this rather wonderful, although very red, which makes it actually quite hard to see what's going on in this photograph, Chaos Dragon. But hey, we are in the red era here, so it makes sense. I like how it's an old So I like with both of these how they're Realm of Chaos era champions that I guess were still in production at that time, even though Chaos stuff had obviously moved on to this more sort of uniform, more static, less chaotic style. That obviously still available through mail order, possibly still available in shops at this point. Anyway, so it's nice Chaos Dragon conversion here, so keep an eye out for this. This is going to appear later in this issue as well. And Nagash, Lord of the Undead, hooray! Possibly the most hated model. I kind of quite like him. Rather controversially, having seen the Gary Morley initial head sculpt for this, I actually prefer this one, the big skull clown head, but actually I don't think either of them really live up to the Mark Gibbons artwork, which is a shame. But I've seen people do a few very minor tweaks with this one and make it look stunning. So I'm still a big fan of the big guy, even though I got rid of my one. And here's one of the two necromancers that were out at the time. I think the other one is somewhere later on in the issue. First incarnation, I think, yes, pretty sure, first incarnation of Warlord Ghazghkull Thraka. The model anyway, probably not the name, as the name Magurak Thraka is yeah, very much a nod to a Prime Minister of earlier times. So people who say that there is no room for politics and satire in fantasy gaming, you're wrong. There's a great history of it, and this is certainly not the only instance where a particular political character has a fantasy incarnation. But yeah, he's got bigger and bigger and bigger over time, as most things have, and he's quite a flat pose here, but I do have fondness for the previous Ghazghkull Thraka. Blood Axe Commandos, Evil Sons. Again, these are still the Rogue Trader era plastic bodies, I believe. No, plastic arms certainly. The bodies are different. They're different metal bodies, but they're still using the arms from the previous iterations. That bolt pistol is very very noticeable. So we're still not fully into everything re-released for second edition. There's still some hangovers, and that you've got the older version of the Land Raider. I see that the new 30k Horus Heresy stuff has an upscaled version of this, which is fairly faithful, which is quite nice to see. Modelling orc buildings, these are such iconic things, aren't they? It's square blocks of foam core with very regular holes cut in it, putty daubed over the top. But you know, they were encouraging people who wouldn't have known that. I mean, when I started collecting White Dwarf, I wouldn't have had any access to this, and perhaps the fact that I'm now model making and you know, teaching effectively, although not a technician. I'm sorry, I'm a technician, not a lecturer, but effectively teaching modelling to students. That probably came from growing up with Warhammer and Lego. Quite honestly, that's where it came from. And building these kind of things at home, although I didn't have foam core. Wasn't a model shop anywhere near me, couldn't order it online, so everything I made was made out of cereal boxes and didn't last very long because of the flimsiness of the card. Here's that wonderful Chaos image. I remember as a kid when I saw this on the big boxed set of Chaos that came out at that time, looking at this big engine in the background and going, I'm not sure, is this a fantasy or is this a sci-fi thing? I don't know. And I think that was quite nice that Chaos was such a mixed, alien, strange thing that you could have these two blended together. But then, unfortunately, the Chaos figures at the time went from the wonderful, weird Realm of Chaos stuff that we saw previously to quite mundane, big armoured knights with horns essentially became Chaos, which was a bit of a shame. But anyway, this is a fun fun battle report, Dwarves versus Chaos, and as you can see, here is our friendly Mike McVeigh converted red Chaos Dragon from earlier on, leading this army into battle. Lots of Dragon Ogres here. Lots of Dragon Ogres, lots of Beastmen. It's not like they were trying to sell us Beastmen at this point or anything, right? And of course the model Chaos Dragon and the new Knights that had just come out, and some horrors against some cannons and lots of dwarf infantry and crossbows. So it's an interesting clash, and it's illustrated with these. I actually really like these sort of clip-arted battle report things. It makes it very clear to see what's going on, interspersed with these recreated images. It was nice later on when everything was a picture, but it's sometimes much harder to see from a picture than it is from one of these illustrations what's actually happened in a turn. And because it's a whole turn condensed into one picture, it's just mad and chaotic, and you can look at all of the little blast things and trying to work out what order everything happened, judging by the text. Here's another image of that dragon there, that Chaos Dragon, assaulting the dwarf gun line. So I had this gun as a kid, and I remember the guy I remember it quite fondly because there's a bit of a story, but I'm not going to go into that now. But anyway, this gun, and I remember the guy with the flaming taper to light it, standing on his step stool. I do remember that. I don't remember what other two guys I had. I think I had the guy carrying the cannonball, but I really don't remember the other two crewmen. I only remember the guy lighting the cannon, and it's long gone, so I can't check. But I've looked through the catalogues and nothing really jogs my memory. So yeah, I don't know. It's a complete mystery, but it certainly definitely came with two crewmen. Anyway, going back to the dragon, when we have a look at the conversion article here, it goes into great detail how this dragon is only pinned through this one foot, the left foot that's on the rock here. It's pinned through here, and there's a big long pin. Make a great deal of how big and long this pin is, because it's got to support the entire weight of the dragon on this leg. And from this angle here, you can see it's leaning a little bit towards this foot, but you definitely can't see anything supporting underneath here. If you look closely here, there's very definitely like a peg or a tree trunk or something underneath the right foot there. So I think maybe even that big long pin was proving too much stress for this metal leg, and the weight of this thing was kind of tipping down on here. So they haven't told you that they've had to emergency pin the other foot, but that's definitely the case. If this dragon ever turns up, if anyone has it in their collection or has seen it, let me know if the other leg is pinned. And then we're at the catalogues. Marauder Dwarfs, love Marauder Dwarfs. Love Marauder Dwarves. These guys, these Longbeards here, these are my favourite. I would love a unit of these guys. I keep looking out for them on eBay, but eBay prices currently. Here's our two Necromancers. I had both of these. This one was the first one that I got. I was never a big fan of either of these Necromancers. They both looked a little bit silly, but I don't know, in retrospect and with nostalgia, I quite like them. There's good old Mr. Nagash. Bloodball sort players. Actually, I wouldn't mind a Fungus the Loon for my Night Goblin army. He's a good-looking fanatic. And Orcs and the Space Marines. There we go. And on the back here, what have we got? This is Golden Demon Space Marine Trophy winner Fred Reed from our Bristol store painted this Howling Griffin's army. Anyone know? Is he still around Bristol? Does he still have this army? Howling Griffins, wow, that's a lot of colour. red and yellow. Actually, it's like my Empire army, but with blue as a spot colour around the edge. Anyway, it's fun. It obviously wouldn't win Golden Demon these days, but it's a fun looking army nevertheless, and quite It's always nice to see different people's painting. You see studio heavy metal stuff a lot, and obviously that's beautiful, but it's really nice when you see other people's styles of painting as well, that they aren't all just following the same, you know, rigid step format. Anyway, there we are. We've done it again. We've done the 80s and the 90s comparative White Dwarf. Hope you like that. Well, not really comparative, just looking at them. Hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you again next time. Take care.